Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from 6, and today we are checking out Kakashi's Addiction. Makes sense. I thought this would be quite an interesting, fun video. So I think this is going to go over why Kakashi likes his books so much. And let's just get into it.
Kakashi and Jiraiya have an interesting dynamic. They seem to hold a great deal of respect for each other as fellow shinobi, but aside from their job as ninja and training Naruto, the two of them don't really have a lot in common. Or at least that's what I thought before looking into this secret connection that the two of them have. Throughout the Naruto manga and anime, it's pretty well established that Jiraiya is an author, aside from being a shinobi. It was actually one of Jiraiya's novels that Minato read and wanted to name his son after a character in the book,
yeah, of course, yeah.
And so Naruto was named after the main character of a Jiraiya novel. Upon our first introduction to Jiraiya, he's doing what he calls research for one of his new novels. This novel would eventually be Make Out Violence, the second in a series of 3 books, the first being Make Out Paradise, and the last being Make Out Tactics.
Okay.
These novels would even become hugely important to figuring out Jiraiya's secret post-death message about pain.
Oh, of course, on
the series of books is obviously for adults only since it's extremely perverted, and although we don't get too many descriptions of the novel, there are a few things that lead me to believe it's pretty vile. One is that the research that Jiraiya does for these books, he watches women take a bath without their consent in order to gain what he calls inspiration to write the novel.
Probably is.
2 is that Naruto, the guy who made the sexy jutsu and is willing to perform it in the middle of the street, calls the first novel indecent. And the third reason is that Jiraiya just outright admits to being a quote-unquote mega perv. Aside from that, another thing about these novels that they have in common is that Kakashi has read all 3 and he loves them. When being presented with the last novel in this series, in the first chapter of Naruto Part 2, Kakashi acts as if Naruto has handed him the Holy Grail. He starts sweating, and the text font even changes to show his speech pattern had changed.
Which doesn't happen
Naruto hands Kakashi this book while he's in the middle of reading the second book in the franchise, Make Out Violence, and the way Kakashi immediately starts reading the book Naruto gave him despite being shown in the middle of the second book leads me to believe he was rereading it rather than reading it for the first time. Kakashi also doesn't want to be spoiled on this novel so badly that it ends up being the reason that Sakura and Naruto get the bells from him in the bell test later, when Kakashi should have remembered that Naruto hadn't read the novel, which he said when he handed it to him. But why these novels? Why is Kakashi seemingly addicted to reading dirty novels written by Jiraiya? As well established by the Naruto manga, a bit before Kakashi started to become active as a ninja, a giant conflict later called the Third Great Shinobi World War broke out, and most of his childhood life must have been spent on the battlefield as a result. The reason I think is likely Kakashi reads these novels and reads them extremely often and even rereads them is linked to his depression due to all the loss he's had over his life. And I'd like to shift to talking about those losses and how they affected him. We get to see a major event in this war that take a huge toll on Kakashi's life in a flashback arc that covers the events of a boy's life on the battlefield. Around this time, Kakashi is about 9 or 10 years old. It's the day he becomes a Jonin, and we know he's around this age because Minato mentions that it was 5 years ago that Sakamoto took his own life, and that Kakashi hasn't spoken of his father since that day, and Obito says he's never heard Kakashi mention his father, and we know Kakashi and Obito met in the academy before they were ninja. More evidence of this can be found in the latest Minato manga, where you can see Kakashi, Obito, and Guy greeting each other in the background with no headbands on. Given the 10-year difference in Kakashi and Minato's ages, that would mean Minato is around 14 or 15 here, and Kakashi is 4 or 5, given we know he graduates from the academy at 5 and then is assigned to Team Minato, and Minato meets Obito on that day, as evident from him saying, "Oh, so you're Obito," when Obito shows up, and Obito's unfamiliarity with the personality Kakashi had before his father's passing. You get the conclusion Kakashi was around 9 or 10 when he became a Jonin. That's enough yapping about timelines and ages though. I'm just trying to draw a picture here that Kakashi is extremely young entering the war. Even younger than Itachi was when he had to slaughter his entire clan. Younger than Hiruzen when he had to pick up the mantle to become Hokage. And he had gone through all of this while younger than Naruto was before Naruto had even graduated the academy. Now, I'm not here to compare the tragedies of all these characters to what Kakashi went through. Itachi had to take out his entire family,
that's
among other tragedies.
big, like,
Hiruzen lost his mentor while simultaneously being told he had to run a village from a young age during times of war. Just take into account Kakashi's younger age at the time than the two other people I mentioned. At 4 or 5 years old, Kakashi's dad took his own life.
That's a
And
lot
aside
to
from
deal
Kakashi
with.
losing
Right.
his own dad, Kakashi's dad was sort of a larger than life figure in the shinobi world. He's a great hero, and it's said on numerous occasions his power rivaled the Sannin. But even aside from his
Like, hasn't Kakashi's dad also got a Funko Pop out now as well, which I think's a bit. I thought that was a bit of an odd choice, but pretty cool.
power, he had a reputation that rivaled them as well. The White Fang of Konoha legend is a legendary hero, but even with that legend-like status, he was not immune to the slanders everyone would say about him and what would eventually cause him to take his own life. Minato says that growing up beside someone as great as Sakamo, it's not particularly surprising that Kakashi has an unnaturally high standard for other people. But he also says that the entire ordeal with Sakamo caused his body and soul to deteriorate, meaning that it's likely this wasn't a quick ordeal and Kakashi saw his father over time start withering away as a result of the guilt and criticism that got to him, and I think I may have found some evidence for this. In a flashback with Kakashi,
I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't expecting this video to go into actual deep reasoning behind Kakashi reading these books, but I'm enjoying this.
and his dad meeting Guy and his dad, he was depicted with these bags under his eyes, and he isn't wearing his headband. This could be a bit circumstantial because we never get to see Sakamo in his younger years, but we also don't know how old he was when he died for me to say these are linked to his age. But when he's talking to Kakashi about how he had an early death just like Kakashi did, who at the time was 30, it leads me to believe he's not that old. And I know shinobi don't always have to wear their headbands, but it's extremely uncommon to walk around the village without
one, yeah.
especially at the high level. Asuma, Kurenai, Kakashi, and Guy all walk around the village wearing their headband, whether on or off mission. The eye bags I'll attribute to sleepless nights, likely due to him being eaten away by guilt and stress, which, like Minato said, caused his body and soul to deteriorate. This interpretation makes Kakashi seeing his dad in the afterlife even more sad to me, because it seems like Kakashi was visualizing his dad the way he remembered him, which was as a great Konoha shinobi, symbolized by the headband that Sakamo no longer wore in the later days of his life. This is somewhat consistent with how Kakashi visualizes his dad when made to think of him by Obito, which leads into my next point. Another possible link to Sakamo's depression is his haircut. If you look at this image, Sakamo had this ponytail, he had pretty long hair, and in the flashback with Guy, like I've been mentioning, this isn't present in its main
Okay, yeah, he
cut.
hasn't been looking after
A
himself,
hairstyle is a
hasn't he?
pretty dramatic part of an individual's appearance, and changing it normally resembles a change in the actual person's life.
Yeah.
More likely than not, you've also met someone in your life who went through something traumatic and decided to cut their own hair. This is especially true when things happen to a person completely outside of their control. It's a way to establish some level of control back into their life because your hair is your hair, and give them access to a pair of scissors or clippers, no one can really tell you what to do with it. A pretty popular example of this is Shane shaving his head in The Walking Dead after his mental breakdown.
Oh, okay.
But to wrap up this short little haircut rant, I think Sakamo did this whenever he felt depressed from the
because the
slander he was
Punisher.
receiving. It is entirely possible, of course, that Kishimoto simply forgot to draw Sakamo's ponytail, but what I think I've done here is establish a few different factors that lead to the conclusion Kakashi saw Sakamo deteriorate rather than simply
fair.
one day he stumbled upon
I like it. Like how Six approaches all these things. He gathers everything, and it's never just like a loose point. It's like, I'm going to mention this, and then here's what backs it up. It's cool.
his dad's corpse. I do want to keep talking about Kakashi's loss since it's integral to his addiction, but there is another thing to point out about his addiction that's important, and it's that Kakashi doesn't just read erotic novels. Now, it's not like he watches adult films or explicit
Might do,
manga,
you don't
but he
know.
doesn't just read erotic novels. He specifically reads only Jiraiya's novels, the Makeout series, and an important detail is when Kakashi started reading these novels, And luckily for me, this is kind of spelled out to us. In the 5th chapter of Naruto, Kakashi whips out this book during the bell test, and it's the first installment of the Makeout franchise. He claims he can't wait to see how this story ends, meaning he obviously has not read it before.
Yet, right.
So, what took Kakashi's mind off of his depression and loneliness before he found this book? There are two things that mainly kept Kakashi's attention that we know of. That being his time in the Anbu and the time he spent failing every student that got assigned to him. These two things have dedicated fillers about them in the anime, but in manga the details of both are pretty vague. We know Kakashi was in the Anbu, but we have no idea for how long or when he joined. But if he was anywhere similar to how he was during the anime arc, then Kakashi at this point in his life was a complete demon. He likely dealt with his depression by simply taking his pain out on others instead of letting it
fighting.
And I think it's pretty obvious that when Kakashi was failing all these students because they didn't pass his test, that the test is to look for the next Obito, so to speak. Given how all of his lessons revolve around Obito's quote to him during Kakashi's guiding, and how he speaks that quote at the end to all of Team 7, I think that's a fair assessment to make.
I loved getting that reveal of Kakashi's quote coming from Obito. Like, that was cool.
Reaching a bit here, but I don't care. Do something about it. But I think Kishimoto gave Kakashi this erotic novel interest at the beginning of the story because he'd have Team 7 to worry about, so he'd need a new thing to take his mind off of all the things that have happened to him in the past. The Makeout series being the first erotic novels Kakashi read, and getting him out of his depressed state, or at least just a new thing to set his mind on, he likely reads and rereads them to try to experience and re-experience what made him happy. So when talking about why Kakashi is specifically glued to this set of novels, that's why. All things considered, these novels work as an escape for Kakashi, or I guess you could call them a coping mechanism. Kakashi obviously has friends around the village and people he cares for, but everyone close to him in some way or another met an unfortunately quick end. I think it's pretty hard to dispute that the loss of Obito had the most effect on Kakashi, and is likely the one that lives with him the most, considering Kakashi's left eye is a constant reminder of Obito and the sacrifice he made on Kakashi's behalf. Kakashi also likely regrets the way he treated Obito for the majority of the time they knew each other.
Yeah.
Kakashi is treated as Obito's duo of sword, sort of like Naruto and Sasuke, but they only got along for about a day in real life, and it's a crazy thing that in that one day, Obito had gotten Kakashi to shake up his worldview so much and gave Kakashi something to remember him by for.
Yeah, they were only mates for like a day, weren't they? Like, close. So strange.
Ever. And these factors largely contribute to Kakashi holding Obito in such a high regard. When something in your life as critical as the way you view the world itself is changed, the moment or thing that helped you change, or in this case, forced it to change by appealing to Kakashi's emotions, obviously that's going to stick with you.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier how Kakashi was trying to find the next Obito by giving these tests to all these students that he failed, and there's a lot to be taken from that as well here. Kakashi initially became this stick-to-the-rules dickhead because of his father's passing, and how his father was treated for specific decisions he made while on mission, putting his comrades ahead of the mission. If such a great man could do that and be slandered for it, even by the comrades he tried to protect, then it must really mean the mission is more important. But Obito is the complete opposite of Kakashi's dad. He's not a seasoned shinobi, he's not a skilled shinobi, and yet this weak kid who couldn't even hold a candle to Sakamoto stands firm in his ideals and gets Kakashi to believe in the exact same thing that his father did. Even though Obito changed Kakashi's life with this decision to stand his ground, Kakashi's life continued to get worse. Following Obito's passing, as some time afterward, Kakashi would be forced to kill Rin, who Obito asked him to protect with his dying words. Whether or not this was set up by Madara is irrelevant, because it doesn't change how Kakashi feels. It's hard getting a read on exactly how much Rin meant to Kakashi. Obviously, Kakashi cared for her a lot. The fact that he killed her caused him to pass out on the spot. But Rin doesn't have much character. She's barely in the manga, and the lines she does have, there isn't a whole lot you can extract from them. So it sucks to say, but it seems like her purpose was to die by Kakashi's hand to drive him further into depression. And a similar thing goes for Minato, although Minato shows that he genuinely cares for and understands Kakashi. By explaining to Obito why he is the way he is, he teaches him the Rasengan, he coaches him on different jutsu, and him giving Kakashi command on the day he became Jonin shows he truly cares about Kakashi maturing as a ninja. Given this extreme care, it's likely Minato was sort of like a second father figure after Kakashi lost his own father. Kakashi's mental image of Minato is so high that he can even see him in KCM2 Naruto's image during the War arc, and he said that he genuinely believes Naruto's the only shinobi that can surpass Minato. So I think I've adequately described why Kakashi is depressed, but how does this link to his seeming addiction to erotic novels? And the answer to that question is easy, and I think I've already answered it. This is an escape for Kakashi.
Yeah.
Kakashi has had one of the hardest lives of all the shinobi we've encountered in Naruto, and his erotic novel reading and rereading help him not think about the horrible things that he's been through and likely had to do himself once he was a part of the Anbu. Kakashi does have friends, but the ones closest to him, like he says to Sasuke, are all gone. So it's not like he exactly has someone he's comfortable with telling all these horrible feelings he has to, or he may not even want to burden someone with it. So Kakashi buries himself in his book and suffers in silence.
I wasn't expecting that at all. I was expecting some kind of funny approach. But it does make sense. Kakashi's life was so depressing at such a young age as well. It makes sense he'd want some sort of escapism to take his mind off of things. And yeah, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video and want to be able to watch patron-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series, the link's in the description to the Patreon page. $1 month for live support channels. Greatly appreciate. Thanks for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? If you guys think of this, click like, subscribe if you haven't. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss it in future videos. And I'll see you guys next time.